long before the land had a single name, before borders or emperors or even writing, the earth itself shaped the people. The Yellow River ran thick with silt, unpredictable and violent, flooding villages without warning and then retreating just as suddenly. To live beside it was to gamble with survival. Yet generation after generation returned, rebuilding homes, planting crops, and learning that endurance was the first form of wisdom. Small communities grew into cultures. They shaped pottery, buried their dead with care, and carved symbols whose meanings would be lost to time. Stories emerged of ancient rulers who taught farming, medicine, and social order. Figures like the Yellow Emperor and Yu the Great, whose battle against the floods became a metaphor for civilization itself. Whether these figures truly lived mattered less than what they represented, the belief that chaos could be controlled and that human order could mirror cosmic order. Out of myth, memory slowly hardened into history. China's recorded history begins with violence and control. Along the Yellow River, early rulers learned that whoever commanded land and labor commanded survival. The Shang Dynasty, 1600 to 1046 BCE, ruled through military force, bronze weapons, and tightly controlled cities. Armies marched with spears and chariots. Prisoners were taken, territories absorbed, rivals erased. Power was hereditary but never secure. Kings led campaigns personally, enforcing authority through war. When the Zhou overthrew the Shang, it wasn't gradual, it was decisive. The battlefield determined legitimacy. China then fractured. For centuries, states fought non-stop in what became the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BCE. This was total war, mass conscription, espionage, assassinations, and military reforms. Iron weapons replaced bronze. Infantry armies grew into the hundreds of thousands. Generals were rewarded, executed, or betrayed depending on results. Victory mattered more than loyalty. This was an age of ruthless efficiency. States that failed to adapt were annihilated. One state rose by being more brutal, more organized, and more disciplined than the rest: Qin. In 221 BCE, Qin Shi Huang ended the wars by crushing every rival. He unified China through force alone. He standardized laws, currency, writing, and roads, but ruled with terror. Dissent meant death. Entire families were punished for one man's crime. His armies expanded borders while millions of laborers were driven into exhaustion. To secure the north, walls were connected into what would later become known as the Great Wall, not as a symbol, but as a military barrier against invasion. Thousands died building it. The empire was unified, but brittle. After the emperor's death, rebellion exploded. After the Han collapsed, China shattered into rival states locked in constant war. The Three Kingdoms period was not a romantic age, it was a military nightmare. Wei, Shu, and Wu fought for dominance through endless campaigns, betrayals, and shifting alliances. Cities changed hands repeatedly. Armies starved, regrouped, and marched again. Victory depended on timing, deception, and the ability to strike first. Generals rose and fell rapidly. A single defeat could end a career or a life. Warfare became professionalized. Soldiers trained year-round. Fortifications grew more complex. Strategy manuals were studied as closely as weapons. The country never truly recovered stability. The centuries that followed were no calmer. Short-lived dynasties replaced one another through coups and invasions. Borders dissolved. Local strongmen ruled through force. Bandit armies rivaled official troops. Survival required combat skill, discipline, and loyalty to commanders rather than to the state. Out of this environment emerged specialized fighters. Military communities formed around training, defense, and escort work. At Shaolin, combat techniques were systematized for real fighting: unarmed strikes, weapon defense, endurance, and coordination. These were not rituals or performances, they were tools for survival. Fighters protected supply routes, defended territory, and fought armed opponents. Skill was the difference between life and death. The Tang Dynasty reunited China through military power. Elite cavalry, disciplined infantry, and aggressive campaigns pushed borders deep into Central Asia. Tang armies crushed rivals and secured trade routes by force. Chang'an became a global capital, but it was sustained by constant military expenditure. Holding such territory proved difficult. Frontier troops were stretched thin. Regional commanders gained autonomy. When rebellion erupted, it spread fast. The An Lushan Rebellion devastated the empire, killing millions and permanently weakening central authority. The Tang survived, but never fully recovered. The Shang Dynasty inherited a dangerous world. Militarily weaker than its neighbors, the Shang compensated with technology. Gunpowder weapons, crossbows, and advanced siege machines became standard. Massive walls and layered defenses protected cities. Armies focused on containment rather than conquest. It was not enough. Enemies adapted. Steppe forces learned to counter Song defenses. The empire remained wealthy and advanced, but vulnerable. Pressure mounted from every direction. Then the Mongols arrived. The Mongol invasion was unlike anything China had faced. It was fast, coordinated, and merciless. Resistance meant destruction. Cities that refused surrender were erased. Entire regions were depopulated. Mongol cavalry moved faster than traditional armies could respond. They communicated across vast distances, attacked supply lines, and struck unexpectedly. Chinese fortifications slowed them, but could not stop them. Under Kublai Khan, the conquest was completed. China became the Yuan Dynasty, ruled by a foreign military elite. Mongol commanders controlled garrisons. Chinese forces were reorganized and restricted. The empire functioned under occupation. Rebellions erupted constantly. Uprisings flared, were crushed, and flared again. The Mongols ruled by force, but never achieved full stability. The Ming Dynasty rose from rebellion. Former soldiers and peasant fighters defeated Mongol forces through persistence and brutal campaigning. Once in power, the Ming turned inward, determined never to be conquered again. Defense became doctrine. The Great Wall was rebuilt, extended, and militarized. Watchtowers, garrisons, signal fires, and cannons transformed the northern frontier into a permanent battlefield line. Soldiers trained constantly. Supply systems were reorganized to support long-term defense. The Ming also built a powerful navy capable of projecting force overseas. Yet internal problems undermined strength. Corruption drained resources. Court politics paralyzed decision-making. Commanders competed rather than cooperating. When external pressure returned, the system cracked faster than expected. The Qing dynasty seized power through military conquest, defeating the Ming and suppressing resistance. At its height, Qing armies controlled vast territory. But the world was changing. Modern warfare arrived. Firearms improved rapidly. European powers brought cannons, rifles, and naval force beyond anything Qing defenses could counter. Internal rebellions, some involving millions, drained manpower and finances. Traditional armies struggled to adapt. Fortresses fell to artillery. Command structures failed under pressure. One defeat followed another. By the early 20th century, the imperial system collapsed. The last emperor abdicated. 2,000 years of dynastic rule ended. The fall of empire did not bring peace. China fractured again. Warlords controlled regions with private armies. Ideologies clashed violently. Civil war became permanent. Then Japan invaded. Cities were bombed, territories occupied. Warfare became total. Guerrilla tactics, sieges, scorched earth strategies. Civilians suffered on a massive scale. After years of fighting, one force emerged dominant. Through discipline, organization, and control of territory, the People's Republic of China was established in 1949. Victory came only after decades of destruction. Modern China was forged by war. Its systems reflect centuries of invasion, rebellion, and survival. Centralized authority, strict control, and military readiness were not chosen lightly. They were learned through collapse. From bronze weapons to kung fu combat, from cavalry charges to fortified walls, Chinese history follows a pattern. Unity achieved by force, stability maintained by vigilance, and collapse when control weakens. Conflict did not interrupt China's history. It shaped it.